Okay, so anytime that you can get someone's hand to cross someone's body and keep it there, turn towards me, Sam. This is the same method, right, of pulling tension on someone this way, right, and asking him to turn that way. Yeah. We can do the same thing when we cross people's bodies, right? That's why when we do this, if he tries to turn back into me, he has to fight his elbow past his center line. Once his elbow is past his center line, he can now turn his whole body. This applies with legs and hands, right? And it applies if you do both. Or singular. Does that make sense? Now, you can catch this from a lot of spots. One for passing, right? Easy setups, right? We call them gift wraps most of the time. But crossing the body is going to be able to give you a lot of back exposure if that's what you want. Reason why is because you're either affecting the hips when you cross someone's body with the limb, or you're affecting their shoulder and you're causing that exposure. Now, if they're flat and you have a cross body, this is fine. You're not going to get back exposure because you have a really decent pin, right? For him to get out of it, he's got to turn his body completely sideways, basically. And when he does that, he's typically going to expose more of the other side. And you can either capitalize on that or use it to however you want. I don't really care. But as a whole, today, I just want you to look at keeping people's limbs across their body. Now, let's just say we were playing a game, right? And I was like, boom, right? He's trying to settle back up with me, square back up. Right, we're here. All I did was take one and I took the other, right? Does that make sense? All right. I want you to do something of a similar fashion. You're just here, right? Put them down. Either try to cross the body, right? And if it comes back, see him cross the body. Cool. Just give it a feel. Work it around. We'll get into a more tactical way of doing it. So you saw it for passing, right? You can do it for exposure, as we already talked about. Even do something like this, right? We can also do the same thing when people are trying to escape or anything. So if he's pressing away, we can push limbs down and use it to come back to pinning. You'll see how this hand is across his body. Do you feel very powerful? Right? This, the simple crossing of his body, has taken his whole spine out of alignment once I flatten him, right? You see how his head, right, has to do this? How they pinch together and they occupy the same space? You don't normally do that, right, on your own? No, right? So I'm forcing him to be out of alignment, keeping him flat, right? This is super easy. So when you're looking, don't just look at it as like, oh, I'm here and I'm gonna pass, right? Because he could turn right now and just turtle up. Well, the other way, but it's fine, right? Because all my driving force was over, right? So when we gift wrap, now if they turtle up, go ahead and turtle. See, I still have control of the other side and everything. Cool. Okay, come back down. Okay, cool. All right. So when we're here, right? If they're going, let's say we had it crossed on this side, right? And they're trying to turtle up. We can always take the other side, pull that elbow across, right? His pivot point is his shoulder. If I take this elbow and I keep it in the center of his body, turn that way. Turn that way.
One turn.
It's hard, right? Once his elbow is under control and back towards the core of his body, right? For him to pivot this direction, right? If this elbow can't move, I can't turn that way. Does that make sense? So, you not only can use it as an entry method, right? You can use it as a method of keeping someone pinned. Tracking? Okay, so what I want y'all to do, come back here, is be here, right? They're gonna try to turn away from you, and I just want you to scoop the elbows, right? Turn away. Turns this way, scoop the elbow. Tries to turn that way, scoop the elbows. When I scoop those elbows, what I'm trying to do is put them to the center of his chest, or I can trap them underneath my chest. Does that make sense? If you can do it with an elbow, you can do it with a knee. Just think about that when you're doing this as well.
What do you
Okay.
mean?
What do I mean? Easy. He wants to turn that way. He wants to turn towards me. Now I get back into the leg weave.
Very effective.
Tracking.
Track.
If you can do it to an elbow, you can do it to a knee. Give it a try.
You just got it right.
So let's say we're here. We get our cross of our body, right? Again, we can use it for exposure, right? See how my back is now able to touch his back? I mean, my chest is able to touch his back now, right? Originally, the only thing that I could touch was his chest, right? Once I get that cross body and I pull it, see how my chest is able to touch his back? If we can get this result, we know that the same thing happens, again, with the knees. If we can do something like this, see how I can now touch his back? Or, same thing, right? Crossing that body, right? Causing that exposure, stuffing it down. Right. And I want to get that top position for the pinning answer, if that's what you want. Right. Now we're here, different side, causing that back exposure. So I just want you to take these spots, right, and get rotation out of them. So come here. We were stopping rotation last. Now I want you to force rotation. So you're gonna take your body and drive whatever it is over and stay connected and get either desired pin or back exposure, whatever you choose. I don't really care. Does that make sense though? So last time we were stopping rotation, this time we're incentivizing. Go. So we just discussed that we could do it, right here, control, work it up, right? Cross the body. Now we have both elbows trapped across the body, right? Boom. If he wants to flatten out, he's got to beat one elbow or another elbow. It's not really going to happen, right? But we can do the same thing with people's feet, right? Say it was here, get him like this. I cross his body with one, cross his body with the other. Please leave your back, sir.
Leave my back?
Mm-hmm. See how he had to fucking kick his legs out? The only way he could do it was once his knees were free, right? Once his knees were no longer either open or his feet crossed across his body, right? Like this. Once he straightened his feet, like so, then he was easy to rotate. Why? Because they're not crossed his body.
Flip this foot that way.
Does that make sense? All right. As long as they're crossed their body, they will not be able to leave their back. Now, if they kick out and do all that other stuff, cool. They just gave me their back. I don't really care. But as a principle, you're gonna see how this affects him having the ability to leave his back. Does that make sense? Tracking? Cool. If you do it to elbows, you can do it to knees. So, when we're Xing people's hands, right, we can do it from a whole lot of different directions and everything, but all we're trying to do is get this right here, right? I can now control, right, one side pretty dominantly, right, and the other side mediocrely. But at the same time, once I put a wedge in, how's that feel? Can you go to that side? Once you put just a little wedge in, right, it causes a big effect. Reason why is because I'm essentially holding his wrist on this side as well, as long as I'm putting pressure down.
See, actually, I kind of like that position. If I just thinking for like law enforcement, like just having them just fuck you.
Yeah, so like,
And I have one other free hand.
so you can literally come here, peel it up, get it underneath, pin, right?
Yeah,
If you were talking law enforcement, right? Or now we're here again. You see I'm still pinning underneath, his hand's still across the body, right? I can now have access. If that hand's free, I don't really care. Cool.
Trying to punch your cap, you get a break here.
Yeah. Try to fucking punch me, bitch. Right, but you see
That's
how I
how you
can
go to
cross it
Sapporo.
even like this.
So I like
Right.
that.
You see this? Get away from this.
Yeah, no, that I'm not going anywhere.
So I come, right, if I like chicken wing, I press in, I scoop underneath. This is a really dominant way of gripping someone, right? And it's not cozy, is it? Right? And here, if I want any kind of exposure or anything, I can get it. If I want to flatten it back down, I can get it.
That's it.
So what I'm doing is I'm doing this, except I'm now holding this. Huh. I will tell you, this is very hard to get handcuffs though.
Yeah,
But they ain't going nowhere, you handcuffed them. Can you get away from me, Sam?
It's a back of the rack.
Yeah, that sucks. And even your bone, like where you're holding right here, it's like
No,
a
I'm
lot
gonna
of
try it to
pressure.
you so you can feel it. Okay, the same thing. Feel it, right? Press it. Bop it. Yeah. You want me to bop it? You see how this hold is? Right? They just hold people like this.
Yeah. I'm just thinking that's fuck you.
Yeah, and they can do all that kind of stuff. And if they start trying to kick you,
And spit, and then the elbow to the face, turning the head.
you're like, okay, we're just gonna wait, baby bears. Okay, calm down, everyone's chill. Okay, that's okay. And if you feel like you're gonna lose it at any time, you can always just step over and break it off.
Oh.
That's a good day.
That shit, yeah, right to the armbar. That was cool.
Yeah, so you can always cross people's bodies, right? When you cross them, it makes their fucking muscles weaksies like this, but it also keeps their back to the ground if you choose to do so. I'm not gonna say back to the ground. It stops them from rotating, right? If you want their back on the ground, you can put it on the ground, but it just stops people from rotating. It's very hard to rotate like this. You can get a little bit, but that's it, right? If your elbows are being pulled together, like so, it'll be very hard for you to rotate. Now, if my elbows are just up, obviously I can rotate. There's nothing stopping them. But if they can't move, right, like say there's an imaginary wall that's pressing right here, I'll never turn further than this point, because these are connected. These are connected, right? So when we cross people's body, right, we can pin one hand, right, and still control another hand, freeing your other one. See how I've pinned it above the elbow? Sorry, below the elbow. Perspective, I guess, where I'm at. So if I press down on my hand, right, and I just make them touch their own face, this hand's gonna be very hard to get back. Just feel you for a second. Something like this nature.
Oh.
Does that make sense? Right?
Yep.
Anytime you can cross someone's limbs and then put pressure on elbows or knees, causing that misalignment, you're always gonna win that fight, basically. Does that make sense? That's what I was talking about, the cross, right? Crossing people's hands, if you can get them to their cross, you can also break their stuff, but at the same time, this is great for pinning. Anytime, cross your hands. So if I trap and I just pry, right, this hand is gonna help me break this one. Does that make sense? Alright, so if I was here and I just grab, boom, right, and I went, right, this is gonna be one of the helping of the, this is what I'm gonna break, this is gonna help me break it. Or vice versa, if I'm going down, right, if I'm going down and I can keep this hand in, right, this one's the one I'm gonna break because this is the wall. Alright, this is the same principles like a Bravo plotter or anything like that. Right, say I'm here, I press like this, right? I've crossed limbs and I've made a shelf for him to break it on. Right, so I'm pressing it down, right? That's what I'd break it on. Does that make sense? So let's say we're going for an armbar defense, right? And I slide my foot in, right, then I put my foot on top, boom. Easy break, right?
What?
Jesus.
You don't see it?
Yeah.
I feel it.
He said,
too.
I don't need to see it.
Yeah, that was.
And I'm being
What
nice because
the fuck?
it should
That's
be,
crazy.
Yeah.
should be bone to bone,
Yeah.
right? And even just like right here.
Yeah.
Now, you can do the same thing when people cross their hands. When people cross their hands or their feet, they're shelving their own bone onto bone, right? Let's say, how do I get a better toe hold from right here? Right, if his foot's right there, boom, it's shelved, right? It's just fucking boom, right?
Damn.
But the same principle applies, right, for right here. If I wanted to break this bone right here, I was able to trap this one next to me, and I start prying towards me, right? Anything that crosses can be broken.
So kind of like the Americana too.
No.
No. Like, you know, how,
Because
like,
you're not crossing.
you know, how
In
it goes,
Americana, you do cross, but that's not where you're attacking. If you're trying to wrist lock someone from Americana, yes. Right, or like wrist lock someone from the back. Right, and we're here. And people are defending their handsies or whatever, right, and you get like this, and you're right here, and I can cross my own hands and stuff like that. These kind of wrist locks, these do work, right, but because I cross my hands, right, or they cross their hands, is when I'm able to break it. Does that make sense? Because even when I'm here, and he's like, putting his hand in there or anything like that to like break my grip. He just puts like that over here. That's the same thing, right, but for what I'm talking about is if they reach in, do like this, and they'll cross their hands, be like, I'm gonna give it some extra, and you literally, as soon as they cross their hands, you break the wrist. Cause they shelved it. Does that make sense? Don't shelf your limbs. Yeah, don't do it today.
Thank you.